Good. It's Wednesday afternoon, and I kick it off here. It's 12:34 in Abu Dhabi. It's webinar time. Come in, please, and take your seat. We arrange the seats according to the social distancing rule for you. So when we will begin soon. So let's click on the slides here. All that is working. Thank you very much for joining us for this exciting event today. We expect a quite huge audience because it's a very important topic. Welcome to the fourth webinar Krypto Labs together with the UAE Space Agency conducts to you. This one is focused on the space industry response and resilience toward COVID-19. We changed the name a little bit from the announcement from Space Opportunities and Challenges under COVID-19 to make it more concrete for you. And I think you will appreciate that. You will hear from an outstanding panel of experts, their views on the subject. We hope that all of you will get something valuable out of our webinar. Please do not hesitate to send us your feedback later on. Let me say thank you to the UAE Space Agency and Krypto Lab for the great and seamless organization of this event. It's a truly privilege for me to moderate it. My panel today are Dr. Luigi Scatea, I hope I got the name pronounced correctly.
Yeah,
partner,
that's perfect.
Wonderful. Partner at PwC Space Practice. Salem Al-Mari, the Assistant Director of MBRSC. Luca Del Monte, the Head of Industry Policy at GISA. Dr. Khaled Al-Hashmi, Director of the National Space Science and Technology Center in the UAE. Nazar Al-Rashidi, the Director of Space Policy and Regulation of the UAE Space Agency. And last but not least, Anas Zainedi. Okay, Anas, the CEO of Krypto Labs, and you will pronounce it later on correctly. I will save their bios for later to save this valuable time. You will see them while they talk. I'm Thorsten Kriening, your host today and co-publisher of spacewatch.global. We are a Switzerland-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. I hope many of you already know our website, our bi-weekly newsletters, daily newsletters, Space Cafe podcast, and our Space Cafe web talks. If you have an interest in previous web talks, they're on our archive on our website, spacewatch.global in the event section. Check it out. I think it's worth. I'm based in Berlin, in my home office, where I moderate from today. So, a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you that have used Zoom, just to let you know, we are recording this webinar session and we will make it available in a few days. It will be also available on YouTube. If you would like to ask a question, just use the Q&A section on the lower end of the Zoom webinar screen as shown here, and not the chat, please. If you hit the Q&A tab, you will be able to type your question and send it over to us. You also can vote on questions. Our team will try to answer your questions during the session or responding direct in the Q&A. And each and everybody from my fellow panelists are invited to pick the questions and answer them directly. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to hand over to the keynote speaker for this event. Mr. Fahad Al-Meri is Executive Director at of the Space Sector in the UAE Space Agency. And those of you seen previous webinars know him already. Fahad, it's a pleasure to have you here. Please give us your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Thorsten. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I hope you're all healthy and safe at home with your loved ones. Thank you all for being here with us today again, and thank you, of course, to our panelists, for honoring us here today with another exciting round of information and discussions. We're honored and excited to have you here as well, Thorsten, of course. I know we couldn't have had anyone better to moderate this interesting session. If anybody knows anything about the difficulties and challenges of space, innovation, startups around the globe, it's definitely you. So, you know, we're living in unprecedented times, and almost everyone around the world has been impacted in some way or another by the pandemic. Most of us now working from home, nobody knew how this would really turn out. You know, when it comes to productivity though, I think statistics have shown that people are actually putting in about 30% more time into work. Now, whether that's good or bad, you know, it's a different matter. And whether that, you know, how it changes our life-work balance and how that's being affected is also something else. It all really depends on individuals' point of view, I guess. But from my side, I can tell you, for me, working from home is really more like I'm actually living at work, but with my family. So for me, I'm actually enjoying the way, you know, it's happening here today, and my life balance has definitely improved. I get to spend a lot more time with my family than I would have if I was had to be at the office all the time. Now, while there is a lot of uncertainty during these times, there are also chances for opportunities. For example, we're witnessing more reliability than ever on technology. You know, this is a true testament to the necessity of the innovations that are emerging from the fourth industrial revolution. Pandemic is going to be remembered time. And, you know, as I mentioned before, this period will go down in history. You know, talking about generations and names previously applied, such as baby boomers, Gen X, and currently it's all about the millennials. But, you know, I think that time will be up soon with the new cohort probably going to be talked about 20 years from now, you know. But before we get there, in a shorter time, you know, coming up, you know, during the pandemic, which we believe is really is acting as a catalyst. You know, it's bringing together a lot of people in environments where they're less distracted, time to wonder and ponder. And remember what I said during our first webinar closing remark, as we talked about entrepreneurs, you will be asked one day, what did you do during the pandemic? And I said, I wanted it to be that you came up with a great idea for space startup or an invention that will rise in the next coming years. Over the past 2 decades, we've seen an increase in commercial activities within the space sector. While space-related activities were primarily carried out by governments, the industry has been witnessing a growth in private-led projects. However, many of these activities are in their inception stages. So what does that mean during the pandemic? What does it mean for new space industry? Can startups survive and operate effectively? You know, for all players in the industry, it is now more crucial than ever to maintain effective communication between key players, establish dedicated teams to mitigate through the crisis, and of course, identify the opportunities and challenges ahead. At the UAE Space Agency, we have been continuously working and collaborating with experts in the industry to pinpoint the main opportunities and challenges for the sector. We believe that despite these unprecedented times, there are opportunities for the global space sector. If there is a way, there is a will. And the Emirates Mars mission is today a symbol of that perseverance. However, as many global space events and other projects have been paused, it is vital to assess response strategies, which our esteemed guests today will discuss in more detail. We are closely working with key players in the country to ensure that an innovation ecosystem remains practical and operational online. Fortunately, we're able to do this with the support of our partners in alignment with the UAE's fourth industrial revolution strategy. In fact, today's session is part of our Global Space Industry Accelerator Initiative, which aims to make the UAE a pioneering country in the space industry through innovation. So that's enough from me. Torsten, thank you very much, and I'll hand over back to you.
Thank you, Fahad, for your kind words. Really means a lot. And I looked at our attendees while you're speaking. So our greetings to many of you are, as I know you personally, so it's great to see you here. Yeah, I hope you can still stay with us a bit longer. And if you guys out there have a question to Fahad, please do use the Q&A section as mentioned before. Let's kick off our panel. We will have 2 segments where we will try to cover one about the support of the space sector for the pandemic, and the second about the resilience and the new normal. The question to you in the panel is, the general one is how space, application, technology, science can contribute to global response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And especially for those of you in the UAE, or how does the UAE respond to that? Just to give you all a background of that, at spacewatch.global, we published a report on the 9th and the 10th of March from Yu Yang, a Chinese researcher at the UNIDIR, what's the United Nations Institute of Disarmament Research in Geneva, very early in the crisis, about how China uses space technology to mitigate and to fight against the crisis. Yu conducted her two-part report with the following words: during abnormal public health emergencies, satellites shine. It is clear that various applications of space-based navigation and positioning systems, remote sensing systems, and satellite communication systems have become powerful tools for assisting disease control operations during the outbreak of coronavirus in China. I think that's all something we can sign off. And we in the space industry are fully aware of how cool space assets are and what's the usage of that. But in that particular situation, I think many of our fellow citizens are also experienced that. So let me hand over. Good. PwC worked on two white papers on that topic, and it is my pleasure to hand over here to Dr. Luigi Scatea to give us a brief insight into these studies. Dear panelists, you all have 5 minutes for this first round. Please try your best as you can to keep this time, or otherwise I announced it here and warn you again, I will start singing, and that is something nobody of you wants to experience. Luigi, over to you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Torsten. I don't know if you can load up my slides. Okay, yes, thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you. And just to introduce the subject. So we have been researching at PwC, we have been researching the impact of the crisis on the space sector, and also what the space sector can do to address the issues and the challenges that are created by the crisis. And we produced, as you mentioned, 2 reports. So this is just a brief overview of the first of those reports that is about how space data can be leveraged for impact assessment and policy making during this crisis. So maybe we can go to the first slide. Just as an introduction, I mean, you're all familiar with the global Earth observation downstream market. So you know that it is a growing market, even though it is a relatively small segment of the overall space industry at the moment. We know that it is a market that is growing with a compound annual growth rate of 7% now. And we know that there's been in the last years a vast increase in the availability of Earth observation data in terms of quality and quantity, and a reduction of the cost, and an increase in the way such data can be accessed. In a word, we might say that there's been a democratization of the utilization of space data. So we have seen more and more integration of this data into applications intended to provide insights, and a much more enlarged scope of Earth observation, basically. Clearly, Earth observation has its natural destination in the, if you can go back to the previous slide, sorry. The Earth observation has its natural application, of course, in monitoring and providing an indication of change in what happens. So for the specific crisis today, it's clear that Earth observation and in general space data, so not only Earth observation, but location-based data and communication data, can be used for 3 main types of applications: for crisis management, for impact assessments, so to assess the impacts, and for crisis recovery and policy making in the aftermath of the crisis. So I'm just going to give 3 brief examples because I don't want to steal too much the thunder from the other speakers that will probably be more concrete. But the overall logic of extracting insights from space is that you take the data from satellites, it can be Earth observation, navigation, communication, and you usually merge it with other sources of data in a multi-intelligence fashion. So out of these, you are able to derive useful insights that can help you manage, assess, or even drive your policy making. So if we move to the next slide, I think the first example for crisis management, for example, you can use satellite data combined with other sources of data to help manage the crisis, particularly in developing countries. For example, to understand where people live in countries where this information is not that documented in retail. This is particularly key because population density plays a key role in the spread of epidemics like this one. If we move to the slide afterwards, space can be used to assess economic impacts. So you can understand where economic activity is happening and how economic activity is impacted, for example, by the lockdowns and by the subsequent aftermath of the lockdown. The example here shows an assessment of the change in flight movements in Europe from based on data from navigation satellites, for example. Finally, on the last slide, I'm trying to be stay in my 5 minutes target. You can use it for crisis recovery and policy making. So you can leverage the data from navigation and Earth observation satellites to enforce lockdown measures or social distancing, but you can also use it to implement satellite data in policy making in a more structured fashion. For example, right now we are working with the European Commission for a specific application for compliance in agriculture that is intended to reduce contact for agricultures for farmers when they have to process their subsidies and administrative processes to comply with the Common Agricultural Policy. Maybe we can go more details into that in the Q&A, but I think I'm just at the end of my 5 minutes allotment. So I will hand it over back to you, Torsten.
Thank you very much, Luigi. Very interesting one. So please, again, to all of you that are out in the field, use the Q&A section. And I've seen that Talal already used it, asking a very specific question to Fahad. So I don't want to repeat it here, but it's an interesting one to see how you deal with the situation. However, I would like to move on to Salam Al-Mari, who will share some thoughts about specific studies MBRC is doing to study and support the mitigation of COVID. Salam, are you with us?
Thank you very much, Torsten. Yes, I'm here.
Please push me through the presentation because I know you have a number of slides, and then just give it a go.
Sure, no problem. So good afternoon, everyone. I have a few slides here just to kind of highlight different studies that we are conducting at the Mohammed Barashi Space Center using either satellite data from our own satellites, such as KhalifaSat and DubaiSat, or from data from satellites such as Landsat or satellites which are available internationally. And what we're really focusing on is a few areas such as food security, so studying vegetation, also the impact on environment and pollution through the lockdown and through COVID-19. Also an impact on our cities, on our infrastructure, what the lockdown has done to those types of things, which can be also a support from trying to assess the economic impact, as the previous speaker mentioned, as well as we are trying to predict through satellite data and a combination of other types of data, potentially what would be the areas where a pandemic or COVID-19 could spread in different cities. And finally, we are studying density of cities through heat island analysis. So I'll try to go through these slides quickly just to give concrete examples. So the first one, as you can see here, is the Food Security Toolbox, which is a tool which was developed by MBRC to really support in studying or to help people who are studying vegetation and water and also see the impact on agriculture. So if we go to the next slide, Torsten. You'll see here, this is just an example of data that's coming from Landsat that we are using to look at the land, soil, and the minerals, and also vegetation resources around the capital city of Abu Dhabi. And this can be used for people that are studying where to better utilize resources to improve aspects related to farming, and to also look at the vegetation. So this is one aspect. We look at food security when you're looking at a pandemic. Obviously, food is very important. So this is a tool that we provide to the government, and it's being used currently. The next slide is the impact of nitrogen dioxide, or I would say the lack of that on the peninsula here. As you can see in the Gulf area, this is an image in 2019. And then if you, what we've been doing is we've been studying since the lockdown, obviously, impact. And if you've seen similar images globally, there's been a significant reduction in these gases that are mainly coming out of cars and factories, etc., in the region. So if we go to the next slide, Torsten,
yep.
You can clearly see the first 4 images are in January 2017, February, March, and April 2017. And then we start in 2018, and you can see pretty much it's pretty much similar. If you go to the next slide, Torsten, you go into 2019, there is a slight reduction there. But when you go to the last slide, next slide, please, Torsten, you can see that with these 4 pictures, this is the first quarter of 2020. There is a big impact. So when you look at the final images, you see there's a lot more, less of that red color compared to the previous images. So then we can say from these studies that there definitely has been a reduction in these types of gases, which technically would be a good thing. If we can go to the next slide, Torsten, this is a bit more plotted in a more clear way. So you can see there has been a reduction from 2017, but if you look at the levels in 2017, 2018, 2019, pretty much stable. And then 2020 in the first quarter, there's a big drop. And then next slide, Torsten. This is in April. So again, you see a very large drop. So in every month of the first quarter, because of the lockdown, the effect on the airports, etc., we see a big reduction in this. If we go to the next slide, this is a study that we've done looking at using KhalifaSat data, and we've taken images from different areas of the UAE with a focus on the city of Dubai, focusing on the main, let's say, arteries of the city, airports, ports, roads, you know, anything that you can see a visual change in from space, we have been analyzing. This is one example of the impact on Dubai airport. So if you go to the next slide, we focused on 3 acquisition areas. The first is basically the acquisition area number 1, which was imaged, I think, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe about 10 days ago. And if you see here, you'll see basically half of Emirates Airlines fleet is basically sitting idle around Dubai Terminal 1, 2, and 3. And then if you look at acquisition area 2, this is also an area where planes are parked and stored, which is away from the main terminals. This is also Emirates Airlines fleet. And if we go to the third, this is around the 4th terminal in Dubai Airport, and you can see that there's planes everywhere. So we've done the same for also the other airports in the UAE and the region. And the rest of Emirates Airlines fleet, just in case you're wondering, because they have a lot of planes, is mainly parked in Al Maktoum Airport. So there's about 200 aircraft which have been parked in that airport. So we think this is quite a unique opportunity to take these types of images globally to see really the visual impact, and you can really also look at that from an economic perspective. If we go to the next slide, Torsten, this is a study that we have conducted, and we've gathered multiple sources of data to conduct this study. So some of it is from entities such as Smart Dubai, from telecommunications companies, from water utilities, etc. And we're looking at where, and then obviously using some of our data to look at where the density of the population is high, where a lot of people are living in tight areas, and that would obviously be an area where potentially the spread would be higher. So as you see here, those red areas are the very dense areas in Dubai, and some of them around the creek are the areas actually where the majority of the spread of COVID-19 in Dubai was detected and was announced. So you can see that this data does showcase an actual trend of those very dense areas have a higher likelihood and also did have higher instances of COVID-19. Luckily, I live in those blue areas, so we haven't seen many cases over here, but that shows you in the areas which are kind of spread out, that are closer to the desert, there's a much lower chance of contracting that, especially if you're doing social distancing. So next slide, please. I'm getting to the end, Torsten. So this is also another study using different types of data from international satellites like Landsat, which plays well into the previous slide, which is studying the urban heat islands. If you go to the next slide, Torsten. So with this type of data, obviously we're trying to see where there is, through these urban heat islands, Dubai municipality and entities such as that require this data. We provide it to them and do these studies for them, because that showcases where there's a lot of activity, human activity. That also, this type of data plays well into the study that I previously spoke about of the probability of where COVID-19 could spread. So this type of data supports those types of studies. And if we go to the next slide, you can see the satellite data from Khalifa-Sat, so a desert area and then an urban area with vegetation. And then you can see when you're studying from a heat island perspective, you can see the type of data you would get and how that can be ingested into different applications. And with that, I am done. Thank you very much, Torsten.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. On time. Thank you very much, Salem. It was really a blast to listen to your work and the achievements of FMBRC. Let's have a look to Europe and the European Space Agency. And I would like to hand over to Luca De Monte, who is connected to us just via phone, so he can't see what we show here. So I hope that the images will be in line with his saying. So ESA work to deliver crucial information and services, in particular to decision makers, to fight the pandemic. That is the particular question here I have to Luca. Luca, handing over to you.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, and thanks, Torsten, for this question. Indeed, a lot has been already said by previous speakers, so I will not take too much time in this case. It's true, and I would like to confirm that the European Space Agency has been solicited from the very beginning of the outbreak of the pandemic by all our governments, our member states, and by the European Union to deliver crucial space-based services in support of fighting the pandemics and also in monitoring the constructions. In this case, I would say that, of course, the utilization of Copernicus-based imagery, and you know that Copernicus is the European Operational Earth Observation Program that is enabling environmental and economic situation to be monitored in real time. And our system has been used, and as the previous speaker has already shown, this has been also used to monitor, for instance, the nitrogen dioxide, the concentration in atmosphere. Maybe you can also show the first slide I've provided you with, is showing an animation. It's a new the variation of nitrogen dioxide concentration over China from December to March. We have seen several of these, let's say, imagery provided also by NASA. This one is based on Copernicus 5P, that is the atmosphere monitoring services that observed a decrease in fine particulate matter in the atmosphere, 23%. If you go to the second one, this is the same kind of monitoring, but based on the fluctuation over Italy in the period 1st of January 2020, 11th of March 2020, a 10-day moving average. And again, we are using the same Tropomi instrument based on the Sentinel-5 precursor. But this is one aspect. Another intense utilization has been also with the application called Galileo from Green Lane, that monitors the circulation of goods between countries and identified potential congestion at Green Lane border crossing, also observed by Copernicus as our member states closed their borders. So Galileo is also being further integrated in new application for similar crisis situation monitoring, for map contagious areas and manage the flux of people to shops in quarantined areas, warns about restricted and quarantine areas, alert authorities in case of major gatherings, while fully preserving the personal data privacy, of course. And this brings me, let's say, to the third axe that consists in launching a number of open calls for new application and technologies to respond to COVID-19 outbreak. So GISA has been launching immediately 4 calls, 3 that are based on, focused on, one on Europe in general, one on Italy, and one on UK due to the acute level of the crisis in these 2 countries. And another one, it's a call for new application and technologies to prepare the post-COVID-19 recovery. And we have been literally submerged by a wide mass of ideas, of new concepts, and these calls are now being funded by our member states through also extra funding, and we will start working already on these new technologies and application in the very next 2 weeks, because many companies have already been awarded the contract. In particular, here we are discussing about 5G, so how this new solution will bridge the digital divide, because we have seen that these new conditions of being confined home and being obliged to work from home, and probably in the future this will be more and more the case, have identified problems of, let's say, digital connection and connection to the internet, even in the very heart of Europe. That was something that was not understood well before. Now we are living this situation every day, so we know that the suburban areas as well as rural areas need much more 5G connection in the next, and satellite and SATCOM are obviously, let's say, a solution for that. But also we are witnessing that we have received a lot of application concerning robotic technologies that are motivated from exploration and other cutting-edge technology that will certainly transform the way we live in the future, the so-called the new normal. So for time being, I would prefer to stop here, and maybe in the next round we can discuss about industry. Thanks a lot, Torsten.
Thanks, Luca, and thanks to all of the speakers to being so precise on the time. So I'm very proud of you. Let's come back to the UAE, and I know it is fantastic now to see that we connect the entire world going back and forth without traveling. But even so, I personally miss all the personal contact these days. But hopefully one day we will come over that. However, I would like to ask now Dr. Khaled Al-Hashmi to talk with us about the current National Space Science and Technology Center work in this crisis. Khaled, over to you.
Thank you, Torsten, and all the attendees and the presenters before me. Just a little bit quick brief, NSSC is a new established center where we are designing and building a small satellite up to 250 kilogram, and also we conduct several research, focusing on several research topics. Now, I think we need to give a credit, for the UAE government and the investment that we had on the business continuity, and how that's impacting us. And that's in terms of what we have seen, that all the government entities are well structured in terms of the IT structure. That helps us to overcome the internal issues or communication between entities to entities, where we have seen that there is no impact on decision making or transaction or payments or talking between different entities in the UAE. Now, in terms of the COVID impact on NSSC, of course, there will be we are same as any other company, if we consider NSC as a company. There are things that it is in our hand, we can control it, and there are topics that beyond our hand. So in terms of what is in our hand, it's really is the challenges that we face, since earlier when we hear about the outbreak, is how to set up, a team or to set up the organization to work remotely, heavily depending on the IT infrastructure. So as I said, the initial business continuity of the government forced all the entities to have a proper structure, and that really smoothed the transition, from working face to face into a remote work environment. The second challenge was regarding how to ensure projects are on track. And while you don't see your colleagues or the managers or the engineers working physically. And the other topic is really how to effectively engage all staff by working remotely. The fourth question is, it was regarding how to ensure project leader communicate and take tasking various teams appropriately. As we learned, from this COVID, there is a demand, for new skill set, that maybe some of the staff do not have it, it's in terms of working remotely and tasking the people and to ensure that work can be delivered remotely. So we are in a learning curve, like any other organization. Now, in terms of what is not in our control, I think the major factor or the main driver is the supply side, where as a satellite manufacturer, where we are building now 2 satellites, the main impact was on assessing the ability or the condition of the supplier for our main component for the satellite. As you would appreciate, we were not able to visit them to attend factory tests, or even knowing whether they are open or closed, or assessing their financial status. So these are factors that it was a lot. We had a lot of ambiguities how to manage it. So what we have done is really immediately setting up communication channels with all the suppliers and trying to get report and understanding their conditions and assessing what would be if there is any impact at the moment or in the near future. Yes, we have impacted like any other. So we have 2 suppliers are maybe in default in producing their product on time. However, satellite projects are over 3 or 4 years. So we are working with them, to see how we can accelerate the production soon after the COVID-19 pandemic, or the lockdown is lifted, in all countries. And then regarding our main satellite, I can say we are lucky enough, for the satellite, the 813, maybe you are aware of it, is a new hyperspectral Arabic satellite that built by NSCC. We are at the early stage with the concept phase, which means that we are in the design phase, so we don't need to be physically available in workplace, But the challenge is really, it was in terms of setting up and accessing all the softwares, the design, and communicating with all team and even the main contractor from different parts of the world, especially in Europe, to support each other and to avoid any major delay in the project. So far, we are in the right track, for the satellite project, the Arab Satellite Project 813. And for another project, we are just completed the critical design review. And here we have, as I mentioned, a supplier, maybe they have some issues, but we will try to overcome during the few months, Now, the condition, yes, we are fine at the moment. And let us hope, within end of this month or mid of June, things will be improved. Otherwise, I think all of us, the industry, especially those entities who are manufacturing, will be badly impacted. Also, we need to look at, in terms of the launching providers, there could be some impact. As you know, there will be some shift in the program, and so satellite maybe that plan to launch in Q1 next year, you could be face 3 months or 6 month delays. So we are watching and we are assessing the suppliers and working closely with all the partner to overcome this situation. And that will conclude my brief, Torsen.
Thank you, Khaled. I was happy that you ended up with a positive outlook on that. So I was a bit depressed in the meantime, but we do it for good here. So, and I mean, it's challenging time for all of us, as we know. But thanks again. It's great to see that what you guys are planning to do in over in LA. So, and especially in this very short period of time, that you established the entire center. So great job. So, but we stay in the UAE. Let me ask now, Nasser Al-Rashidi, how does the UAE Space Agency itself responded to support the mitigation of this crisis? Nasser.
Thank you, Torsten. And I must say that it's very difficult to speak after all the distinguished speakers, because more or less they have covered a lot of critical points in a very, very elaborative way. So, but I want to state something from a policy perspective. If there was a technology, in my humble view, that would have come from heaven, it would have been space technology. While sometimes technologies could be part of a problem, maybe contributing to the problem, space has always part of the solution. You call it climate change, you call it environmental problems, you call it public health, you call it disaster management, whatsoever. You find space always, as we've heard by our distinguished panelists today, how it's been contributing to become part of the solution. I think the colleagues have done a great job restating and emphasizing clearly how COVID as a global problem, found our ways to, the space solutions, whether it's telecommunications or broadcasting, whether it's Earth observation and imagery or sensors, whether it's GPS that is helping, all this, unmanned and autonomous vehicles, drones, you call it, and so on. But I wanted to start with something else as well that probably we are, maybe we didn't talk about, but it's very important, for us as well. That comes with space. That's inspiration. That's giving hope. I think Dr. Khaled is, and Mr. Fahad Al-Meheri, they are, of course, leading let me say, the mission or the supervision of a mission related to the HOPE probe. And I can see more need for the word hope, not only for the region, but even globally than this time. You have this inspiration coming with the Mars mission that, as we've heard yesterday from His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, and the chairman of the Space Agency, and and Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, that alhamdulillah we're starting the counting down of our Mars mission and things are going on track. This hope is very important element that space is contributing. Another thing I would like to highlight as well is diplomacy. Sometimes at the time of difficulties, we just find ourselves consolidated with each other. And I think COVID has brought this. We've seen how governments, in various, aspects, they have come together towards, collaboration, trying to make, this is a global problem. We're almost as strong as the weakest link. And we have to stick together. We have to act together as much as possible, regardless, of course, of some flexibilities in the details. But in the end, we agree on some certain principles. Now, space has also been a platform for that. And I can mention that 2 or 3 weeks back, we had the disaster charter, space disaster charter, which is basically a charter of over 17 space agencies around the world that are sharing space data in case, God forbid, a disaster happens. And COVID was part of the agenda to be discussed, and how can we support governments through space data towards their mitigation of the response. So this is another area, where I see, alhamdulillah, space and the Space Agency was part of, supporting and, the government in terms of its response to mitigating the impact of COVID-19. There are other aspects I have to mention. One of the other things I follow is education. And what we've done in here is that, we, of course, we have some certain students, of course, that are studying abroad, and we had to, of course, make sure that they come back safe. So we followed up, of course, with our students to make sure that they come back safe here in the UAE before, of course, extra measures related to quarantine comes in place, and coordinate with the different universities to make sure that these students, they don't miss out, part of their, education, and maybe cause some delays. We've also worked with the, Krypto labs and Labs3, to be specific, on putting an Instagram education program to educate kids about space and COVID-19, how space can play a role, when it comes to COVID-19, and you can, follow it up on Instagram. On also other perspective, when it comes to, another hat that I work with is I'm a director of GISA, the Global Space Industry Accelerator. And we are already received 151 applications to our different areas related to space. And one of the criteria that we take into account, which of these amazing ideas and innovative ideas are coming, can actually serve the government towards its mitigation of COVID-19. So that's already taken into account in our criteria of evaluating innovative proposals. I must say that we've also been in touch with space sector and non-space sector, trying to understand the challenges that they have, and also find out an innovative solutions from space perspective that can actually, do this. We have been engaged with over 23 or 25 entities, and our target is to do this across 77 entities. So I must say that COVID was a test for our innovation and our resilience, and we're acting.
Thank you, Nazar. I thought you forced me to sing, but you're good. Thank you very much.
Thorsten.
That is a special program. We don't want to start here. So finally, and to close the first round here, let me ask our Anas, our CEO of Krypto Labs. You guys are started very shortly in relative terms before the crisis hit the global market. How can you help to mitigate these effects already? And I think that goes hand in hand with what Nazar just started to point out. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thorsten, and thank you to all the distinguished panelists and participants. And I think everything that I wanted to say has pretty much been covered, and Nasser touched up on a lot of the recent initiatives that we've been doing together. But I just want to start off with one thing. In terms of innovation and entrepreneurship, this is generally an area that a lot of people find great benefit in terms of the physical connection that takes place. And this is through the various community events, workshops, meetings, etc. Of course, with this current situation in the global pandemic, it has no doubt disrupted this entire context. Now, to mitigate the overall effect, what we have done is developed various contingency plans for each of the projects and the programs that we have. And we've transformed all of our programs to be online and to be conducted all virtually. This goes for a lot of the incubation and acceleration programs that we have running, as well as some of the university innovation entrepreneurship programs. We have an online academy now that was previously physically set up at one of the local UAE universities. So we do a lot of this through live webinars instead of physical events. So this has definitely had a major impact on the way that we deliver our programs and services. And it has also enticed one of our own local startups, which Nasser mentioned, Laboratoire, that was already doing a lot of experiential learning to focus a lot more of this educational, through an educational platform, talking about space technology specifically. Now, no doubt has this had an impact on us, primarily the project that we have with the UAE Space Agency, which is the New Space Innovation Program. This is an incubation program that will culminate in the creation of 4 local UAE-based space tech startups. And we were actually just about to start onboarding these startups at our facility in Abu Dhabi, but this is now going to take place all virtually online. as a result of the impact of the pandemic. Some of the other somewhat space tech related initiatives that we had previously, primarily with drones research and development, some of this has now experienced certain delays because a lot of the startups that we have funded, in order to progress to the next stage, they need various hardware pieces. And of course, with all the delays in manufacturing, this has pushed a lot of these programs to have some delays. Now, overall, I guess the advantages in terms of all of what we do as an innovation hub and all of the services that we provide is that it's actually become a lot more convenient for the attendees. So with the shift in all these programs going online, it has increased engagement and definitely reached a wider audience. I mean, just from this seminar alone, we have close to 200 people attending. You do a physical event of something in this kind, you'll have maybe 30, 40, 50 people on a very good day. And these are all people locally just in Abu Dhabi. Now you have people from all across the world being able to log in. And in one of the previous sessions, we had close to 350 people actually log in. So it's definitely an opportunity to be able to reach more attendees, more mentors and experts. And instead of your mentor or your subject matter expert being local in your town or locale, they could be global. I mean, you're in Switzerland or you're in Berlin right now, and we're doing this session. There's no way we could have done this if it wasn't for the pandemic and the situation. And so this is also the other thing is, with a lot more people being home and working from home and schooling from home, it's saved them a lot of time. And it gives them the opportunity to capitalize on that time by actually being able to attend a lot more programs. We get a lot more inquiries now, people wanting to work on their startups because now they're free, they have more time, so they're able to do it. So definitely we've seen a gradual shift of more people wanting to engage with our programs, wanting to do more online based on the circumstances that have now enabled them to do so. And so the bottom line is that we need to all continue in supporting these startups. Incubators, accelerators need to maintain that level of support virtually. The VCs need to continue to support with all the financial commitment and investment. And we all need to work together as a fully embedded ecosystem between the private and the public sectors alike to support startups, ensure that they're able to transition through this difficult period and come out of this stronger than they were before.
Great. Thank you very much. I mean, I assume that your startups couldn't contribute to the mitigation right now because it's a too early stage. Is that a fair assessment of it?
It is a little bit early, but actually one very important point is, with this new space innovation program that we're in the stages of doing the final evaluations and selections. So because the application started before COVID, now we're actually looking at which of these startups will have the greatest impact that can solve some of the problems today. So this problem did not exist, 3 months ago when we had launched the applications, but now we're actually looking. So this is one direct thing that we are now looking for in terms of these startups.
Great, thank you very much. Again, I would like to encourage my fellow panelists to pick up a few of these questions. A few of them are really personal to you. So there's one about the sourcing for components to Khalid and so on. So just pick them. And to all of you out that ask for jobs and things like that. So there are other websites taking care of that. So one of them is spacewatch.global. We have a job section with our partner Nuco. So check up there. They can give you some guidance. So with that, we finalized the first round. It was fantastic, and thanks again for staying in the time frame. And so let's do a second one. The question here to lead into this second round is the impact of the pandemic on the space economy and how space industry is boosting its resilience to mitigate such effect or such impact again. I think it's a very complex question, and I know it is a lot of crystal ball reading here because nobody of us has experienced it. Nobody of us has an answer as of today. We all can do our best. So we at spacewatch.global published a thought feature on 29th of March from our Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder, Dr. John Sheldon, about the time after the crisis and the new normal. As he gives this point, we have to adapt to whatever comes down the road. So nobody has this master the blueprint for today. So as we are advanced in time, so we have half an hour left. The second round would be a 2 or 3 minute answer each. And please remember, I'm start singing, so I hope you don't go there. Luigi, can you please elaborate on the resilience from the other white paper PwC published recently? Over to you.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. So I'll try to stay in 3 minutes again. So in the end, what Thorsten was mentioning is that we did another white paper that was trying to look at the impacts of the crisis, of the coronavirus crisis on the space sector. And particularly what we tried to do was to look at the 2 different aspects. Okay, what's going on during the crisis core? So let's say during the confinement and lockdown that were implemented, that are implemented all over the world, basically in various to various degrees, and what could happen after the lockdown are lifted, like it's happening right now at the moment in several parts of Europe and worldwide. So the logic is to see, okay, what happens when there is the shock, and what happens when in the aftermath of the shock. So to assess the resilience of the industry. It's quite difficult for me to basically synthesize everything in 3 minutes. So maybe I will just give a few pointers and then we can discuss afterwards. So just to summarize a little bit, the 2 pointers reported here are that in the end, when you look at the direct operational impacts, so like during the crisis core of the crisis, those can be mainly classified as potential delays in the supply chain, while mission operations are still generally ensured. Of course, mission operations do not include, for example, launch operations, where several launch sites were actually shut down as a result of the measure of confinement, like, for example, the CSG, that, like the rest of France, was subjected to the lockdown measures. In terms of the more specific, so non-operational impacts, we can clearly say that cash flow and financing issues can arise for small and medium enterprises and also for startup, and this can pose a risk of business continuity already in the crisis core, in the shock, and possible supply chain disruptions. Generally, this has been managed quite well in most regions, and probably Luca will elaborate on that on the specific European case. And the third point is that in the medium long term, so after the crisis, we expect the space sector to be shaped by the wider impacts at macroeconomic level and at public policy and procurement level. So what does it mean? It means that in the end, the space as a sector is per se relatively resilient. So we have done within my company, we have assessed this type of impacts for different industrial sectors, and to remain in a close. No, if you stay back to the previous slide, because I think I won't present the other 2, but basically to stay in a more coherent ambit, I think you can compare to defense and aviation. So space sits a little bit in between in terms of resilience, with defense being more resilient and aviation being widely impacted. But the issue is that in the medium term, space will be impacted by the impacts on other industrial sectors and the wider economy. So the type of public policies that will be put in place also for the other sectors will have an inevitable impacts on the space sector as well. So this is valid for different regions at different levels. So there are very, very significant regional specificities. And we can expect that some like established space countries will fare probably better than emerging countries where there is not a significant space industry to protect and sustain. So in general, economic assessments will be needed in order to really define what happens at different regional level. I had in the paper, we have a detailed analysis per space domain, because of course space is vast and quite diverse. So what happens in Earth observation is quite different from what you might have in SATCOM and so on. But I don't think we have time in this 3 minutes thing. So I encourage you, if you have a chance to maybe read our reports and
where are your
and you can
reports?
find
Maybe you can point out where your reports are available.
yeah, so if you go to the last slide, yeah, this one. So here you can see that at pwc.fr/space, if you go to the bottom of the page, you have all our openly available publications, which includes these two. And just one minor point before I hand it over back to you. For this particular report, I wanted to thank Nasser in the panel here with us, because he actually contributed with his views and to the execution of the report. So
wonderful.
With that, I hand it over back to you, Torsten.
Great, thank you. So next one, Salem. So how does the new normal will look like for you guys? So how will the MBRC change after this crisis? I mean, you have all these great outstanding programs, and we mentioned it before, the HOPE mission is on its way. You have this astronaut program and so on and so forth. I mean, that has an impact or will have an impact. So how will you go out of that or come through that? Are you still with us?
Yes, I am, Torsten. Thank you. Basically, that's a good question. I think maybe I can talk a little bit about the different programs that we have and kind of the impact areas that we've seen currently, and then I'll just jump very quickly into the new normal. So if I look at satellite operations, we are currently operating a number of satellites. That's probably an area where we haven't seen an impact. So obviously with work at home, the whole of the center is at home, except when we talk about satellite operations. So they have key duties that they perform, and then you're able to operate your satellite, download your data, and make sure everything is fine. So that we see, that area obviously has what we'd call some resilience. When we look at the developing our future satellites, so we're currently in development of one of our key satellites and a few other missions, and we do see some disruptions in supply chain. When you're in design phase, which is where we are currently, you can do a lot of those activities online or through Microsoft Teams, etc., and email activities. You don't really need to be at the center or in your clean rooms. But once you start, receiving components and you're starting to actually do some test beds, and then obviously that would have an impact on people being there. If you look at EMM, we're lucky that we haven't faced an issue with the launch. So our Japanese partners, the launch base is open, things are going good there. When we look at our astronaut program, we have faced some issues because we're in the middle of an astronaut selection. So we've just closed the application process on May 1st, and we now have to evaluate about 4,300 people, but we have to do that remotely. So we've put a plan B in line that we'll be doing a lot of the evaluation through Zoom or through Teams, and psychological evaluations, the different aspects that you would usually do in person, we're doing online. And hopefully by the end of the year, when we plan to have our final panels and selection, we'd be able to meet in person. So these are kind of the impacts that we've seen slightly on our programs currently. And if we look at what's the new normal, I mean, I've kind of summarized it here in 3 different words. I think probably we at MBRC will allow more of our people to work from home, especially if they're not required to be in the office specifically, because we see very high productivity from certain people who don't need to be, let's say, interacting with a lot of others. And then I think probably less travel would be one. We see from these types of webinars, conferences, etc., especially in the space industry, it's small in every country, so you tend to be traveling everywhere. So that's probably one that we would probably instigate, less travel. And then probably we could do a lot of more of our work online as we are doing currently. So I think these are 3 changes that we will actively look at to try and implement. That's my summary. Thank you.
Great, thank you. But you're telling me that I would be too late to apply now as an astronaut again, yeah? Damn.
Yes, unfortunately, you should have applied before May 1st.
Yeah, damn, things happen. Yeah, COVID is okay. Thank you, Salam.
Thank you.
Luca, Question for you. ESA's action deployed to mitigate COVID-19 effects on industry and how to foster the economy recovery. Can you give us some a 3-minute view on that? I know that's hard.
Very hard. Anyway, you have to consider that before arriving to space industry, we have to see that space industry is the highest end of an important value-added stream of commercial and public strategies and services. So this means that space is totally embedded in our member states' economy at large. So this means that the effects on space will be through the larger economy. And this will also means, and here I appreciated that Luigi mentioned this before, the fact that space is often embedded in the same companies that are also dealing with aviation or defense, electronics. And this means that especially for aviation that is highly impacted by this crisis, we wish to have an imported crisis from other sectors to space. Because indeed, from let's say a structural shape, our segment is overexposed to commercial and export markets. So in this moment where some countries like the USA are taking unprecedented economic measures to ensure the continuity and the viability of critical infrastructure, this means that this asymmetric situation with respect to other space powers is expected to worsen further. And this means that the COVID-19 crisis in turn will lead to a sharp economic slowdown and the dramatic international decrease or reduction in international trade will have a heavy toll on the European space sector. So this means that this may lead also to rapid capability and capacity loss, including also skills, and may take years to rebuild if they are not promptly mitigated. That's why it has immediately taken action to mitigate the impact of COVID on our industry. So already on the 23rd of March, ESA has published 4 lines that we call a lifeline, let's say, that were agreed with the largest companies in Europe, so the largest system integrators, if you want. And these 4 main axes are streamlining of the tendering and procurement process in order to shortening the time to contract, shortening the time to payment, facilitation of partial payments, and facilitation of advance payments. So these 4 measures are essentials because they provided the oxygen and they irrigated our industrial ecosystem with a lot of money. And all this was possible thanks to the fact that ESA Treasury now is quite rich because we just out of a very successful council at ministerial level in Sevilla in last November, where we managed to gather some 14.5 billion euros. And this is part of the structural resilience of the space ecosystem in Europe. However, we have to think that this budget cycle will be over in 2, 3, 4 years maximum. And this means that when we will have our next ministerial council, where we will ask for more money, additional money, then it will be a council in times of crisis. And this will mean that our governments will be fighting with, let's say, reconstruction and recovery of economy. So in terms of observatory, this is also another thing that ESA has set up immediately. It's an observatory to report and monitor incidents that in industry due to COVID. Let's say the severity of these incidents were, let's say, about impacting 25% of our suppliers with a partial or high level of impact, while 75% have experienced no slight impacts. Also very important to note that the Centre Spatial Guyanais, so the space center from the launch range in Europe, was closed, launch activities suspended in line with the regulations. This affected directly 1,500 workers and 7,500 indirectly affected employees. So now activities are going to to start again, but this slowdown will be felt also for additional 4 to 6 months. Overall, our estimates is that the impact on the revenues of European space industry in 2020 may well be above 1.2 billion euros out of a total of about 8.4 billion, according to an initial estimates. So on the medium to long-term measures, we have also put in place facilities to get facilitated loans with the European Investment Bank. And of course, we plan also to support our industry more on export markets and international cooperation. So space diplomacy will be at the heart of the recovery measure in the medium to long term. And one thing that we need to promote is essentially cooperation with the new markets for our industry, facilitate the contact of our industry with the new markets. And I think that the UAE is certainly one of these potential markets that we are eyeing. So we are looking forward to stronger cooperation also, and we are really paving the way for this in terms of fostering the dialogue with the UAE.
Great. Luca, thank you very much. What I'm hearing from you is that as government or backed or agency, what the UAE, what GISA is, like other agencies as well, what you're facing now is that this problem, this crisis, will be put forward to the next round of negotiation. I think it's good to overcome the current situation, but it puts a problem into the future, definitely. Are you agree with that?
Exactly.
Okay.
Absolutely. And this is why we have to really keep an eye on that now and work a lot now. Although it may look like our system is less affected, but in the future, we will see the impact will be much stronger. The worst has to come yet.
Okay. Thank you. So Khalid, over to you. What is needed to get the space industry or the entrepreneurship through this pandemic? Can you help us on that?
Yes, I hope I have the solution. I'm not sure whether the audience has the access to the white paper, before this seminar or webinars, because it's a nice content, and what I like, is the GDP change that they have done by PricewaterhouseCoopers, where it shows, in 2 months, just in 2 months, how the GDP change, goes into negative or during the 2 months, and then it will require around 10 to 12 months to recover to reach the same level of GDP. That is a very serious prediction or assessment. If it is true, then and it will have a big impact. Now, if we look, into the 4 drivers which the paper addressed, mainly the supply, the demand, and the private investment and public policy, I will go ahead and categorize these 4 into two categories. 2 of them are mainly like a causal factor, which is mainly the private investment and public policy, and then the effect or the outcome is the supply and demand. So this, if we look again to the graphs, if we are looking, for example, a recovery 12 or 10 months, then if the government or the private sector not continue funding or supporting the economy by injecting more projects, then that GDP change, we could easily imagine it will be more than 12 or several years to recover. So I hope it will not be the case. So we're looking, I think we're looking at the government in terms of having a public policy where it can support, the R&D, the small companies, whether in space or any other industry. And also there is responsibility for the private investment also to inject, money, because at the end, if they don't do the injection, it will return back negatively, impacting them as well, because we will see a closure, for some of the SMEs, which will impact at the end their projects. So it's a chain of activities. and looking at this impact, not forgetting we are having a slowdown in terms of employment, and we can see already there is an employment rate increase in some of the countries like America. Hopefully this is not the case in the UAE. But if we look into this recovery and having unemployment and also new student graduating and wants to get the job, then the effect will be huge. So I think there is very serious consequences we will face if there is no interventions, from the policymakers and the private investors.
Great.
And I will agree with the asylum also. We learned a lot that maybe 50% of our activity can be done remotely. So we need to downsize our offices, invest more in remote working, but hopefully there will be no cut on salaries of the people working on remotely. So we should treat them equally.
Great.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Khaled. So we will take over the policy question then to Nazar as the next speaker. I would like to point again to these studies, and maybe Luigi or Hanan could type in the chat the URL for the PwC study again for your own audience, for the convenience. So Nazar, we just heard from Khaled. What has policymakers to do to respond to this crisis? So do we have to adapt? I mean, you just recently agreed to the UAE space policy. You put the UAE space law into place. Has that to be adapted right now already, just because of the crisis? Over to you.
Thank you, Torsten. And I must start where I ended. I ended my last intervention saying that COVID-19 was a test to our innovation and resilience. I mean, for space sector, but also globally. And I would like now to take it to the next level, since we're talking about mitigating that. I think we should look at it from a different perspective, coming from a government of the UAE, a government of resilience, a government of innovation, a government of making the impossible I am possible. We actually look at COVID-19 as an accelerator. It is an accelerator and an opportunity for innovation, for efficiency, for resilience, for boosting these three elements specifically, but also other things. What we've done at the Space Agency was we actually followed a 5 stages a plan. First, internally, as an organization, we had to, of course, look, automatically, what are the things that should be done from, house and what can be remotely. And, fortunately, most of the activities could have been done, of course, remotely. So then we look at, the systems that we have and how we can support a very productive environment that can, have a business continuity without any interruptions. And I must salute the Space Agency team, honestly, not just because I'm a member there, but because I lived it and I've seen it. We had the 0-hour interruption in our work from the, the start of the COVID pandemic until date. It was so smooth. A matter of fact, became even more productive. So this is one layer. Then we move to the next layer, which what we call the intra-sector. So we have an activities related to, rolling out our national strategy, as well as our R&D projects and education projects and so on. So we start meeting with the stakeholders, virtually, and looking at, what can be done. And I can tell you that, the beauty about the strategy that, and it had also some flexibility, which means some certain areas and applications, it says according to priority of the government at a time. So then, when we are discussing with our stakeholders, we identify also what is the challenges that they may have in rolling out the strategy, if any, but also how can we prioritize their focus and applications towards something that serves the current national needs. Then we move to the next level, which is the intersector, which means with other sectors, as I mentioned, transportation, environment, security, you call it, all the sectors that we've been engaging with. And we have meetings with them to identify, okay, what is their new priorities that space can actually contribute to that? Because in the end, as mentioned by Dr. Khalid and Salim, we are trying to serve an end customer. We're trying to serve an end user. So we need to go quickly and understand, we know that there may be some changes according to his needs and priorities. This is the right time to be ahead of the game before maybe, he start looking for, other applications while national capabilities can actually serve that. Then we look at the layer after with that, which is the international. So we have, we have been actually engaging with, sending, of course, and engaging with our international partners. And we are actually looking for opportunity. How can we consolidate efforts together for, common interest between the different space agencies? Whether it's in NASA or, Roscosmos or, China and others, we're trying to work with all of our, partners around the world, space agencies, on trying to find out common interest and how can we work together towards coming out of the pandemic with the least impact on the space economy, if not even accelerating and boosting the resilience and the economy of space. So this is how we looked at it. We've discussed also that we took advantage previously with the virtual things. So for example, the productivity has increased in number of activities, to be honest, while of course, due to other external stakeholders effect, some of them, they were delayed trying to, to deal with some of the projects. But I can say that, for example, from an R&D perspective, things are going on track and they're being directed towards more, priorities to the current situation as well. But also in terms of education, we're partnering with ISU, International Space University, to hold the 5 weeks program. And we are participating in that. We are doing, in terms of awareness, that's something for sure that is boosting, because today webinars made it much easier, as mentioned earlier by Anas, and so on. So this is in a nutshell how we're now shifting our paradigm from looking at it as a test, from a challenge to a test to an accelerator towards our innovation and efficiency and resilience.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks, Luigi, for putting the link into the chat for all of you to pick it up. So the last one in this round again is Anas. So again, coming back to the nature of Krypto Labs and your accelerator programs, also our startups have been affected by the slow growth of the space sector right now. What is your advice to your local startups today, because they have to survive this crisis as we all have to do with our entities, corporates, or so. But for them, I mean, tight on money, big on ideas. So what can they do? Anas, over to you.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Torsten. And I think Nasser also covered a lot of points I wanted to say previously, but that just tells you how much we work together. But really, in order to survive, the startups, they have no choice but to adapt to the current situation. They need to pivot their products and technologies based on the current market needs. They need to reevaluate the products and see if they will be able to endure these challenging times. Of course, cutting down cost is definitely one of the things that they'll need to do. Venture capital world has been very generous in the last decade or so. So startups have been receiving a lot of money, and maybe a lot of that money can now be spent more appropriately. But startups basically and simply, they have to expect potentially less funding, and they have to adjust their plans accordingly. But one thing to note on the positive side with all of this is that historically, crises have always presented the best opportunities for founders, for startups, and for companies to come out stronger. So this is a unique crisis in which humanity has not faced in over 100 years, since the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. But the magnitude and the impact of this particular crisis has been unprecedented in history. And given the advantage that we have today with our technological ability and all the cutting edge tools that we have embraced, particularly over the last decade, this presents a prime opportunity for startups to innovate and prepare for a post-COVID era that will create new industries or potentially even subsectors that simply are non-existent today. a lot of the big companies that we have today that we utilize were actually created during the 2008-2009 financial crisis. And finally, I think with centering all of this around space, I think there's been a significant inspiration from the space sector in general. Particularly, I mean, we've all seen the satellite data pictures showing the before and after, whether it's the flight paths or whether it's environmental data, climate, etc. I think this is evident of how much space data is important to our everyday life, and how prevalent the reliance is now on the new space economy, more increasingly than ever before. And also just from the participants in this group, you see a lot of the questions. So it tells you a lot of the questions in the comments, it really, manifests how much interest there is when it comes to space technology, whether it's students, whether it's researchers or entrepreneurs, or, people working in their, normal jobs. So a few years from now, I think we'll start to see thriving multi-billion-dollar companies that were created as a result of this pandemic. So these future companies are the ones that are today already assessing and planning and developing their products to tackle the future of the new normal, and whether that startup is pertinent to a sector that has been negatively impacted, such as tourism, hospitality, aviation, etc., or a sector that has actually benefited from this pandemic, such as edtech, remote working platforms and tools. I think ultimately all of them will be resilient, and they'll all eventually come out thriving once the situation settles. So in a nutshell, startups, they need to refocus, reposition, capitalize on the opportunities presented, and last but not least is tap into this new space economy and start partnering with industry leaders to develop new innovative solutions, test them so that they can finally commercialize them and take them to market.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. Very good last famous words I was about to say. Unfortunately, we are done with our timing. So we have all your questions, and I think that the team of Krypto Labs or the agency will follow up and maybe forward a few of these questions to the relevant speakers that are asked for. Thank you very much for all your interest. Thank you for this great panel. Thank you to all my panelists. So Fahad, thank you for your keynote and for staying with us all this time. Luigi, Salem, Luca, Khalid, Nasser, and Anas. It was really a great pleasure for me for moderating this panel for you. Our thanks are again also here to the entire team behind the scenes, which made us possible. I hope you all will stay well or will stay healthy. There's, I think, a next webinar planned from Krypto Labs and the agency, so stay tuned on that. As always, we would like to hear your feedback, so please check in with us on the relevant social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or I assume you guys are on it. And for me, I have to say, as Eid is arriving now in the next days, I wish all of you that celebrated a wonderful Eid Mubarak and enjoy the time with your family and your beloved ones. But please stay safe. That is most important. Thank you very much, and
thanks
have a great day. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Torsten.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you to the panel. Thank you all very much for all your questions. We had, I think I've answered, we've had more than 50-something questions, and so
there's some
working hard in the background.
There is some homework for all of you to do
later
sure. on. And
no, but this is great. I'd like to just thank
you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank all of you and thank the panel and thank the audience. This is really what makes, the webinar series that we've been running now really great. It's the interaction with the audience. It's the, we try to bring you, people like we have today with experience here. And so like we always say, if you have any ideas, we have a program put together, but we're always open for new ideas. So please don't hesitate to contact us, contact Krypto Labs, and tell us, where you want to go next and what the focus is. So we are here to support you guys and then network you all and help you all achieve, the vision of the UAE and get the new space going and you know, accelerate all the programs we have here. Again, thank you all to all the panelists, and thank you very much, Torsten, for moderating today.
My great pleasure.
Thank
And
you.
as much as I really admire the great work you guys in the UAE are doing for your country, but also for the entire space sector globally, it's great also to see your leadership in this or through this crisis here. So great job.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
all
you.
very much.
Thanks a
Cheers.
lot.
Bye-bye.
See you
Bye-bye.
next time.
Thanks a lot.